At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Nate Zeleznick, how are you?
Dr. Doug, I'm honored and pleased to be here with you and so many people out there. Hello to everybody who's watching or listening right now.
Well, and I'm excited to have you on the show. And as we were talking, I just realized, and we both realized, that when I'm in the U.S., we actually live very close to each other in the same area.
Literally 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
Until now. Yeah.
Which is great. So what I'd love for you to do, Nate, is to kind of tell your background story, who you are, what you do, and how you came to the point where you are working with individuals.
Yeah. So my story started, my spiritual story, I should say, started when I was around 12 years old, sitting on my father's den with a loaded rifle pressed against my head. And growing up in this small valley where we live in Utah, especially in the 70s and 80s, as the only non-Mormon kid, I came under a lot of fire with abuse from my peers, and sometimes their parents would also bully me. And so this was something that was almost a daily occurrence for me when I was in school, and sometimes even during summer break. And so I'd had it. And I couldn't take it anymore. I knew it just wasn't going to stop. I wasn't like them. I was the smallest one in my grade, and I would be ganged up on a regular basis. And so I was looking to take a permanent exit based upon a temporary problem. And the reason I didn't was I thought of my mom and dad, and I just couldn't do that to them. No matter how bad it got, I wasn't going to do that to them. And so I put the rifle away, unloaded it, and they never found out. But that night is when I had my very first out-of-body experience, or my first astral projection. And I had no idea what this was. I just knew that I was seeing my body while it was asleep, and I wasn't asleep. And then it kept happening, Dr. Doug. It kept happening on not a nightly basis, but at least a couple times a week. And I really credit my higher self with saving me from myself. And I became absolutely obsessed with what is real, because I wasn't religious. I wasn't brought up in a religious household. I wasn't even brought up in a particularly spiritual household at all. And yet these things were happening, and I didn't know what to make of it. So when I was 16 and I could actually drive and get my own money in, while other boys were off trying to buy things to impress girls or getting a new car, I was buying things like hemisync audio tapes that were binaural brainwave entrainment tracks, or books on the out-of-body experience, or books on the CIA Stargate program, where they would use remote viewing to spy on the Soviets during the Cold War from thousands of miles away, accurately in a lot of cases, to find out what was really happening. And so I really went down the rabbit hole of the woo-woo. Everything from witchcraft and magic to tarot cards I just wanted to find out, without saying this is real, asking those questions that are most important is, why am I here? How did I get here? What am I supposed to actually be doing? And what happens when we're not here anymore? Those big questions from a young age. And when I was 23 years old, after training in martial arts and bodybuilding and doing all kinds of spiritual adventures and different trainings, well, I had a synchrodestiny that changed my life forever. And it really set me on this life path that I'm on now. And I ordered a course out of Black Belt magazine, and it guaranteed me inner power in 2 weeks, or I could get my money back. So I was like, yes, money back guarantee on instant chi. I want that. And I got this. And it came with this chintzy little manual that had like stick figures drawn in there that was completely bogus. But it came with a VHS videotape that showed Indonesian martial artists. Now, I trained in Japanese martial arts and Chinese martial arts, but I'd never thought about Indonesia as having martial arts at all. And I found out that they have over 700 different systems there and that it's a huge cultural heritage for them. Well, what these people were able to do, not only this beautiful type of movement and combat that I'd never seen before, but also they were not breaking little boards. They were breaking stacks of steel bars, barely touching them. And I thought that was pretty cool. And then it showed people who could literally see without using their eyes. And I'm not talking about some basic things. I'm talking about riding motorcycles and driving cars through traffic in Jakarta, or military people who could fight full contact, bare knuckles, with hoods over their heads. And they could even shoot targets out of people's hands when they couldn't see. And it showed some blind people. And these blind people could read printed material, and their eyes were white as a sheet. And I was really skeptical, honestly. I thought it was BS. But I'd also had all these different out-of-body experiences and read about so many things in the realm of psi that is beyond the physical five senses that I was thinking maybe Jedis are really real. And that night I went to bed, and the next day on my way to work, I drove by the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind in Ogden, and I watched a blind lady almost die in front of me trying to cross the street with her dog. The dog led her straight into the light pole, and I thought to myself right there, I have to find those Indonesian people to help her out, to see if they can help her. And that set me on a course, Dr. Doug, where I went to the Weber County Library up here and I searched for 2 weeks. I finally found those people. I reached out to them, and then I was able to sponsor the very first demonstration of this art in America at Weber State University, also Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, and even for the Indonesian Embassy and the ambassador in Washington, D.C. Now, the name of this art is called Merpati Putih. Now, Merpati Putih sounds funny in English, but in the Indonesian language, it means white dove. So it's the symbol of peace and justice for humanity in a martial art, which I thought was really cool, because most martial arts are like red tiger or black dragon. They're kind of an aggressive fighting style type of animal. And here you have the white dove. And it turns out that it is one of the most, well, the full martial art is one of the most brutal systems I've ever seen. And it deserves its place in the pantheon of kick your butt martial arts, really up there. And so, I brought them over here, and I got to see for myself blind people who could do anything you or I take for granted that we could do with our eyesight, and more than we could do with eyesight. And they had never allowed a non-Indonesian person to learn this in history ever. In 500 years, it was kept within the royal family of Java, and then in 1963 released to the Indonesian people during what is called the Indonesian genocide, where the government of Indonesia killed over 600,000 people.
Wow.
In 6 months. I mean, we can't even imagine what that would be like. And they released it to help people defend themselves, but also understand spiritually we're all the same. We're all one being, and we're just having different experiences through the lens of consciousness. And if I hurt you, I hurt myself. So it was really to bring the country of Indonesia together. Well, fast forward to 1999, when I brought this team over here, when they saw what I was willing to do to help them get a foothold here, to bring this art to help humanity, the 11th generation royal heirs, they gave the chairman of the organization, who was in my house, gave him authorization to have me trained. And there just so happened to be a former special forces trainer for Merpati Putih, which, just as an aside, Merpati Putih is standard training for every branch of the Indonesian armed forces for the past 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, including their special forces. And now, because this breath work and this meditation, this fitness system, this energetic healing, this sensory awareness expansion is so effective so quickly, that's why the military forces use it. But they had never let a non-Indonesian person learn it until me. And I started training with this gentleman the week after they left and went back home. And then a few weeks later, one of my younger brothers joined me, and together the two of us were able to advance through the ranks, faster than anyone was allowed to before, put on a very aggressive training regimen, similar to the Special Forces training. And then we became the very first non-Indonesian Merpati Putih members on December 31st, 1999. So in Y2K, when everybody was worried about their systems crashing, we were worried about our system crashing. And so we became authorized full members. And then over the next 20 years, we've been to Indonesia numerous times for long training and testing sabbaticals. We owned one of the largest martial arts and meditation academies in the country here in Ogden, Utah, close to where we are, or where your house is.
Where we're close
And,
to.
yeah, exactly. And, we were able to do things that no one in history had ever been able to do or been allowed to do. And then COVID came along, and COVID really decimated the martial arts industry. I mean, over 7,800 different martial arts schools closed in the US permanently during COVID. Ours was one of those. And so we pivoted to a seminar format, and we were training just the blindfold skill. And then a couple of years ago, my heart was really calling for me to expand beyond just this, because as cool as it is to see without your eyes, what is really the utility of it? If you're not healthy and if you're not actually spiritually advancing yourself, it becomes a parlor trick. And I wanted more. I wanted to help people more than that. And so now with my Integrated Ascension Method, what I do is I help individuals as well as businesses and athletic organizations and basically people with lungs and people who have a body. If they don't, I can't really help. But it's people who want to really find out more of who they really are and embody a deep practice spiritually that is not denominational, it's non-sectarian, it's not belief-based, it's based upon experience and knowledge, because belief is a poor substitute for knowledge. And so I don't subscribe to belief in many things at all, other than believe that you can experience, that you're here to experience. It's ongoing. You can't shut it off, and everything changes. Those four things are pretty immutable.
It's interesting that you talk about, avoiding the religion part of it. What I found here is, as I'm here, I've really enjoyed studying Buddhism. And one of the more recent things that I looked at was, why did Buddha not believe in God? And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the whole point that came across was that he was teaching the people here how to become the best that they could become in the circumstances that exist here, and in Asia. And it's interesting to see what has happened, because his original teachings have then become taken by individuals, and now there's, I think, over 3, 4, 5 different Buddhist religions, and they all differ a little bit from each other. And so when we look at the reality of the eternal truths, okay, and what you're talking about, you refer to it as spirituality, who we are. You take that, and all of a sudden, religion has adapted that to various religious organizations and so forth, and for the good for the most part. But as you say, in your particular case, which is so unfortunate in Utah, you started to become bullied because you were not part of that major religion there. And that's most unfortunate. But what I love is the fact that you're talking about how we can become the best that we are, and actually who we are, from an eternal perspective, from a spiritual perspective, without getting into all of that other part, which can be very important for people. But our discussion is going to take it away from there and say, all right, folks, become who you can become. And I love the integrated ascension. I love that whole concept and how you describe that. So let's talk about that a little bit, because not all of us, I mean, when I was first thinking about talking to you, it's like, you know what, I can't do martial arts. My shoulders are shot, my knees are shot. There is no way. But as I was reading more, talking about the meditation, the insights that you can gain through that, and particularly, it just amazes me that people have gotten to the point that they can see when they're blind, and what that would really entail for individuals to see themselves when they're not physically blind, but emotionally and intelligently, sometimes they are blind to who they are and what they can actually accomplish. So let's talk a little bit about that as far as what is that integrated ascension, and how do you become that higher self that you truly are, and how do you actually come to that realization that who you think you are and who your parents have told you and everybody else externally is not who you really are spiritually?
True. I often think, Dr. Doug, that when I see parents that are berating their young kids, I keep thinking to myself, well, but on a spiritual level, maybe they are much more ancient than you. They're just in a small body. Hmm. I
Yeah.
have, I always think that's interesting to think, you're talking to an immortal, unlimited, eternal being that happens to be, have poopy diapers because that's what their body is doing right now. But the real them, that's eternal. So are you. So it's kind of interesting. But that's also a different perspective than I think a lot of parents have. And I've also never had children myself who have colic and are crying all night. So I don't know about that.
All right. So
So
I have four. So there you go.
there you go. So the integrated ascension method, the reason I created this, as I mentioned, I loved what I did before, but I don't teach martial arts anymore. I've kicked enough people in the face. I don't need to keep doing that anymore. And the thing is that the Marpati martial art is so diverse that it has five different elements. The first one is fighting, then forms. So once I take those two out, we have the three other internal aspects, which are internal energy generation, or taking the iron in our blood and magnetizing it so we have a greater electromagnetic or a biomagnetic charge, which we can measure with some equipment now.
Yes.
And doing that quickly through very specific intermittent hypoxic breath work. So holding our breath. It's not the type of breath work a lot of people are familiar with, like Wim Hof or holotropic breath, where they hyperventilate and have visions. This is specifically for creating health in the body by raising our CO2 level, by releasing what are called hope molecules, which are what are released from our muscles every time we flex our muscles, and using this to create a very interesting chemical it's an interesting experience that is not like anything else that you'll ever experience. So
Okay,
the
I want to stop you right there because I want to talk about
sure.
that a little bit. So there's three things we're going to talk about in the near future. But so you talk about breath work. I just interviewed someone who had that hyperventilation where and they told me, you don't do it on your own. You need a little bit of guidance because, as you say, when you do that, you can get to a point where, you're not really in control of what's going on. And people talk about different types of breath work. So you're talking about a very specific one. And if I recall what you said, you're talking about how you do hold your breath. Can you go into that a little bit more and talk about what that is and how an individual does it and what's the outcome of that?
Sure. So similar to what they were talking about, it's important to have guidance. So I have online courses, and people can also do online Zoom courses with me so that I can make sure to monitor them. So when we hold our breath, and this is now this is kind of as an aside, we'll put a pin in that, come right back. In 2019, the Nobel Prize in Medicine and Physiology was won by a doctor named Gregory Semenza and a team who were talking about the benefits of hypoxic work and how that can actually help reduce our cancer. It helps with diabetes. There are numerous things that hypoxic work, when it's done in an intermittent fashion, helps. If it's a chronic fashion, well, then you're just starting you're depriving yourself of oxygen and you're not able to function right. If you go to 29,000 feet, you get hypoxia. It's not good for your body. But when we do it in a specific way, either through breath work or through carbon dioxide therapy, what happens is we raise the CO2 level in our body. So we have more carbon dioxide, which is the catalyst for allowing red blood cells to be released from the hemoglobin in the blood. If you hyperventilate, your body thinks you're doing something fatal to it. So your blood vessels in your brain constrict. You have your kidneys have to flush your body with bicarbonate to help lower the pH because you get so acidic. And this is all normal things that happen for our body to be able to keep us alive. Well, this kind of breath work that I do, the Integrated Ascension Method, is based upon a different kind of chemical process where we hold our breath, we raise our CO2 level, but we keep our oxygen level high. So we basically supercharge our entire system. And as we know, with most cancers, they're anaerobic. They do not like a high oxygen environment, right? But so many people, if they hyperventilate, they're still not getting oxygen because they're cratering their CO2. So they don't have the catalyst to release oxygen. So kind of like walking around with $1 million in a briefcase and not being able to get the money out. That's what happens a lot of the time when people do that. So, and now there are people that are having really negative health effects from that hyperventilation type of thing, including some deaths. And so this is an important thing to do it while we are being monitored by somebody who knows what to look for and has done it themselves. Not a weekend warrior who did one class and one workshop and is like, I could teach this now. I mean, people who have been in the trenches, who have taught a lot of people, who know what's happening physiologically, but also what can happen emotionally and mentally when we start to have cathartic release, because energy in motion, emotion, as we start to move our energy, we start to move our emotion. And
Okay,
so,
so I'm curious, and you may not want to talk about it, but how do you do that? I've read different types of processes on that, where you hold it for 8 seconds and then you release, and there's all those type of things. What is your methodology, and how does that work?
yeah, so without going too much into the secret sauce, because those are available on my courses, but imagine holding your breath for as long as you possibly can. Like some people, it's 5 seconds. Some people, it's 45 seconds. While you're moving your body in specific ways to activate different energetic pathways in the body, while you're having very specific mental focuses of your energy, of your mind, in order to direct your energy for certain purposes, whether that's seen without your eyes, that's remote viewing. Maybe it's considering that we have over 33 million people with asthma in this country. It's reducing your asthma symptoms, which we've had at least 95%. Without getting to FDA, violating there, but we've had
Right.
at least 95% of people report that they no longer have asthma after just a couple of months of this training. So when we do this, holding our breath for as long as we can, while tensing our muscles as hard as we can, while moving our body in very certain ways, while we're also using our mind in a very specific focus, we step into the realm of what some would call superhuman, and I like to call future human, because it's something that we can do. It's natural that we can do. We're not irradiating people and making them
Right,
into the
right.
Incredible Hulk. This is something. So I can't explain the entire thing because it takes a long time to actually learn this. And that's why it's important to have like home study courses or online training, or me personally working with people, whether it's at their home or whether it's online, whether it's in a organization setting. But that's the basic crux of it. There's no other breathwork system like it that I have ever seen, and I've been in this game for about 25 years now. So
Okay, my curiosity
definitely
is
me.
such that I'm going to come online later on and take a look at what you're talking
Great,
about. But I
absolutely.
appreciate, and folks need to realize, you're not a physician. I'm a dentist. I'm not a physician, so we're not talking about any medical thing. And again, for people that are listening, make sure you check with your physician before you ever get
Of
involved in
course.
any of this stuff. Now, I smile because I use the CPAP, all right? And I'm thinking, they talk about how if you've got some problems in that way, you can have all sorts of issues. And yet when I was listening to you, I'm thinking, okay, so if I stop in the middle of the night breathing, then that's probably good.
No.
No.
So yeah, so that's interesting. So there's an interesting, I would say it's an epidemic, really, Dr. Doug.
Yeah.
So we know sleep apnea is bad for us, right? It can lead to heart disease, all kinds of bad things. But there's another phenomenon now. It's a recent one called email apnea. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So email apnea is when people have their phone out and they're sitting there and they're holding their breath while they're swiping and they're watching cat videos. They're actually asphyxiating themselves and having like sleep apnea while they're wide awake because they're into their phone or into their emails. And so that's why I encourage people on as many the most regular basis you possibly can all day long. Ask yourself, where am I? Because the answer is always here, no matter what. And what time is it? Those two questions, where am I and what time is it? And here's why. When we ask ourselves, where am I? It's always here. What time is it? It's always now. That brings us into present awareness into our body. Speaking of Buddhism, as you mentioned before, the famous Buddhist scholar Thich Nhat Hanh, he would talk sometimes about an out-of-body experience, not like the kind that I had when I was a child and still to this day sometimes have, but he was talking about the out-of-body experience where your mind is somewhere else than in your body. You're thinking about something you regret in the past that you cannot change, or something you loved in the past that you still cannot change, or something in the future that hasn't happened yet, but you're not here in this moment. You're having an out-of-body experience with your mind. And so to help remind people, coming back to the present, where am I and what time is it, reminds us to breathe. And we'll realize that we have been breathing shallowly. We've also probably, for most people, they find themselves breathing through their mouth, which noses are meant for breathing, mouths are meant for eating. So we should breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth at all times. I suggest people tape their mouth shut when they sleep. It's amazing what happens. You don't even have to get up to pee because your oxytocin goes up. No, sorry. It's the vasopressin is what goes up when you breathe through your nose, and it actually stems off the need to urinate. So you don't get up as much in the middle of the night. And there's all these benefits that happen from breathing properly. And this has been known for at least 150 years.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
okay. Let's go to number two. Two. Sure. So you talked about three things. Breathing was one. What's your next number two?
Okay. I'm not quite kind of blanking on that right now.
We were talking about the integrated ascension, breathing.
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. So the first one is the inner power generation through the breath work. The second one is internal healing. Our body wants to be healthy. Intrinsically, we want to be in homeostasis. We want to be healthy, but we have so many things that are against us. We have poisonous food, water, air, our own thoughts with the cortisol and the hormones of stress that can break us down, cause cancer. It can literally, they're seeing now that a lot of diabetes and also Alzheimer's, there's a lot of correlation now being rooted to or being directed toward what is happening with these hormones of stress. The pollution in our house can be 4 to 5 times as bad as what's outside, with all the different things that are in our furniture, in our clothing, our fragrances, these things. It's amazing what we can be doing so that we have a nice smelling house that's actually hurting us. So that's the part, the energy healing part of this. When you have more energy, your body is going to have more energy to then create balance and homeostasis. And so I've seen amazing health turnarounds in a short order with this breath work. The third one is the psi abilities, the going beyond the 5 physical senses. So seeing without your eyes is one, but for instance, the ancient Egyptians said that we have 360 senses, not 5. So we don't know how they built the pyramids. We know we cannot do that with our equipment now. There's no possible way. Right now, humanity cannot build those. They did. They were doing brain surgery successfully. They were able to harness electricity and had light bulbs. There's all kinds of hieroglyphics showing. And then I've seen some documentaries where they actually put the acids together and they, holy crap, they made light bulbs. So they were able to do things that we didn't think that they were able to do, and we've forgotten a lot of that technology. So what have we also forgotten as far as the human capabilities of our sensing and our creation and manifesting ability? We don't know, but that's one thing that's really neat. With this, it's always about, what can I do? What can I do? What is real? And that's really the crux of the Integrated Ascension Method for just this one part. But that's the thing. The Integrated Ascension Method with this breath work from Merpati-Puti is one aspect. That is the foundation of it. But I've also brought in things like biohacking and vibroacoustic therapy, where your entire body vibrates through transducers with certain frequencies while you do this energy work. Things like binaural beats and brainwave entrainment from one of the pioneers, Dr. Jeffrey Thompson. who his company Scientific Sounds, he can do things with your nervous system using sound that he has a patent on it. No one else can do. And organic food through Aria Organic. So some of the most nutritious, non-GMO, all organic food, Indian food specifically, that is blessed by elders before it leaves the warehouse. And it's all infused with the 528 hertz of love. So you're basically eating love when you eat this. And so we understand that everything in the universe is vibration, information, and frequency. Well, if you're feeling the feeling of love, you're going to be in a much healthier state than you're feeling like ashamed, anger, despair, fear. Those ones are going to break you down. So this food alone builds you up. Those are just a few of the things in the Integrated Ascension Method. And I've always been a nerd and a tech geek. So I'm like, I want the greatest. I want the latest. I want the best that there is. And so I'm bringing in things that we didn't even have 5 or 10 years ago. And when we bring that in with Merpati Putti, the results are fast. They're striking for a lot of people. And I'll tell you a story, quick story. When I had one of my good friends who is one of the best big wave surfers in the world, well, this man, he still holds the world record, I believe, for being on a ventilator the longest with COVID in a living. He was on a ventilator for 70 days.
Wow.
And the last 30, he was in a medically induced coma where they wanted to replace it and give him a transplant for his lungs. And his wife said, no, if he dies whole. Well, he woke up on Christmas Day of 2021, and I met him November 2022. So about 11 months after. And he was able to walk about 3 or 4 stairs before he had to stop and rest. His lungs were that destroyed. And so I taught him the first and most basic exercise in the Integrated Ascension Method for breath holding. I taught him, we were in Costa Rica, actually. I'll pre-frame that we were in Costa Rica. I was flown down there to teach a group of people there. And he started getting teary-eyed. And I went over and I asked him, I said, Drew, what happened to you? And he looked at me and he said, Nate, this is the best I've been able to breathe since I got sick. And the next day, we went down to the beach. Drew jumped on a surfboard and he surfed for about an hour and a half. It was the first time he'd been able to surf since he got COVID. So it took literally 10 minutes, Dr. Doug, to do this type of breath work to bring back his ability to breathe. And that's why I really work with 3 types of people. The first, business leaders who have breathing issues, people who are under massive amounts of stress, whether it's exercise-induced, stress-induced, chemical-induced, mother-in-law induced, I don't know. But I love to work with business leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, people who have a lot of people, like they have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And since we have 33 million people with asthma, we have 17.5 million people with long COVID, we have 18 million people with COPD, we have about 14 million, from what I've read, people with emphysema in this country alone. This exercise alone, if you can imagine what it's like not to be able to breathe and be able to hold your breath for a couple minutes in a certain way, and all of a sudden you can breathe better again. You didn't have to take drugs. You didn't have to, feel like you're going to die.
Yeah.
That's what this does. The second one, athletes, people who are either professional or amateur athletes. If they love to run the Spartan race, or they love triathlon, or they love tennis, doesn't matter. If you move your body and you need your lungs, this helps. That's why the Indonesian military uses it, is because the physical benefits are incredible. And the third are spiritual seekers. Like I said, I will never be the person to say, this is how you get up to the mountain. There are many roads to Zion, but I am a damn good Sherpa. I'll tell you that, because I've got 25 years and about 37,000 hours of experience teaching people. This is something that I love to do. And so for the spiritual seekers who want to level up their practice, whatever that is, whether it's Vipassana Buddhism, or maybe they're a breath worker, or maybe they're a Reiki healer, this is the ultimate force multiplier. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm blessed that I get to chance to show so many people like this. And I mean, I do it for free too. Every couple of weeks I teach free webinars. I actually teach real usable techniques that people blows their mind instead of just a bunch of fluff and no stuff. This is all stuff. And online as well, so people can learn all around the world. You could learn over in Thailand when I'm asleep in the middle of the day. For you, you could be holding your breath and feeling like $1,000,000, Dr. Doug.
Oh, that's great. You know, and you mentioned something that I think that I love and I've really studied, and a lot of people talk about it when we get into meditation. And you talk about the different frequencies, the binaural beats. You also have solfeggio frequencies and so forth. What has been your experience for people that are doing meditation that want to tap into some of those frequencies? Do you find in your experience binaural seems to be working better than solfeggio, or
Yes.
how does that work? And let's talk about, we don't have a lot of time, but let's talk a little bit about how people can tap into that area outside of themselves, into those frequencies and apply them to themselves.
Great question. So here's the thing with scientific sounds from Dr. Jeffrey Thompson, that works on the binaural beats, right? So that's going to help create a certain brainwave state. And this man, he actually discovered the brainwave states below delta. Before him, they thought delta was as low as you go. Then he discovered the epsilon frequencies and they keep going. I mean, this man is an amazing genius. And so to take people into these brainwave states with binaural beats is a great thing. But then the solfeggios, yes, the vibroacoustic therapy cushions that I use from In Harmony that I use every single day. I have it sitting right here next to me. That uses those solfeggio frequencies, so your whole body vibrates with them. So what I do is I take this next level breath work that was hidden for centuries, take the solfeggio frequencies, which have been around forever and ever, and then the binaural beats, which are a more recent technology, merge them all together. And people can find out at on my website, which is iampure.energy. So it's not a .com, it's iampure.energy. Go to my products page. You'll be able to go and see these things for yourself, as well as a lot more. That's what I would recommend as far as people who want to actually step into this realm and use this technology to go further, faster. I mean, I'm the guy who always looked for the cheat codes on video games. I want to go farther, faster, right?
Right.
So if you want to do that, that's a good place to start, and it'll explain a lot about it.
So have you put together, and as I've looked and studied on YouTube and various places, you know, usually it's either solfeggio and you've got your different frequencies, you've got the binaural, but it's rare to find the combination of binaural and solfeggio. And again, you know, which frequency do you use? Have you put those together where the audience could actually go to your website and download, even if they need to pay a little bit for that, download some of those frequencies so that they can use that in their course of meditation?
Of course, absolutely. So when they go to my products page on my website, then you look for scientific sounds, and there any of those frequencies. But one of the two of the ones that I really love are the ones for the default mode network of the brain, which is amazing at helping us reset and really manage our stress. The second one is called the flow, and this actually puts your brain into the flow state. What has been monitored and measured as the flow state, this puts you right there. And so that's what I would recommend is people go and get those two. And yeah, you have to pay a little bit, but so what? It's not much. And the thing is if you think wellness is expensive, try illness.
Oh, amen to that. So how long are those frequency meditations going
They're
on?
usually 30 minutes,
30
half hour.
minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you
And you
find
can
do you find that 30 minutes is sufficient? I mean, I
yes.
I try to meditate every morning. I do a walking meditation. I kind of got tapped into that and I love it. But I'm going for an hour. And yet other people talk about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. Have you found that there's not an ideal, but have you found that there's a time period of meditation that seems to be the most effective?
Well, that all really depends on the individual. So I can't say one way or the other. I have done the 8 hour straight meditations with Joe Dispenza and other techniques as well.
Hmm.
I've done 2 hour meditations through the Merpati Putti way, but I really prefer to do Dr. Jeff Thompson's scientific sounds. But here's the thing. If you go into a meditation, let's say you're going to do a Vipassana or a Zen Buddhist meditation, and you sit down and you meditate for an hour, you might actually be in a deep enough brainwave state, say a deep theta state, for maybe a few minutes.
Hmm.
But what if you were able to push a button and it just trained your brain to that theta and you're there for a half an hour? If you have, 5 minutes, you took an hour and you got 5 minutes of that actually there, what happens if you actually get 30 full minutes? That's the same if you were actually able to quantify this as 6 hours of meditation without those, right? Because it puts you there.
Oh,
So
I
that's
love
what
it.
I recommend. And I'm all about hacking this thing. I mean, I was just on a call literally right before this with one of the top genetic researchers in the world about what you can do with your genes and what they express to remove cancers, to remove and eliminate Alzheimer's, things like that, based upon how your genes are activated or not and what you were born with. It's pretty amazing stuff. So this is something that I would recommend for everybody, that when you want to, if you want something bad enough, you'll find the funds to do it. That's all there
Yes.
is to it. If your brakes
And
go out, you're going to get brakes for your car. But the thing is, as humans, because of our nature, a lot of times we don't do anything until the house is on fire.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's important.
and I think it's important for folks to realize that there is scientific basis now of what you're talking about, and there's no question about that. And if they want to get in, and start looking at that, they will find the scientific basis of all this. So this is no longer woo-woo discussion. So as we close, a couple of questions. Number one, reaffirm, how do people find you?
So my website is iampure.energy. And you can also look for Integrated Ascension Method, or I call it the IAM. I love that. The acronym's great. But the Integrated Ascension Method on Google, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest. You're going to find me everywhere. Just Integrated Ascension Method, or Nate Zeleznick. But that last name, I understand, might not be as easy for you to search. So Integrated Ascension Method works.
I know. It's the same as Gulbrands. Nobody can pronounce it.
And that's the thing, is like I said, every 2 weeks I have free webinars where people jump on with me for 3 hours. I give you very actionable, deep breathwork and meditation training using scientific sounds, using Merpati Putti, using these life-changing things that I've had people that in 3 hours they said, this is the most empowering and powerful event I've ever been to. These are seasoned meditators.
And they can
So
tap, they can sign up for that on your website.
yeah, to be able to look at that in my masterclass.
So here's the
Sure.
question, because I have a lot of clients all over the world, so different times. Are they recorded so they can tap into it at their own time, or do they need to get up in the middle of the night?
That's a great question. As of right now, no, they would get up in the middle of the night. However, I am just about to release my brand new app. So on your phone, you'll be able to see the recordings. You'll be able to jump on there. You'll be able to have me with you wherever you go. And it will be the first of its kind for the Merpati Putti, or a lot of these different technologies of its kind in the world, first time. So that's about a month away from release. The most important thing is get on my list, find out what's going on. I release all kinds of free content all over the social media platforms as well. And I've got some really neat, beautiful meditations that you can do using the scientific sounds right on my YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe, like, share, all the stuff to let people know. Let people know.
Fantastic, fantastic. So as we close, what would be that one message? And obviously you've got a lot, but what would be the one message that you'd like to share with the audience that could make a difference for them?
One of the most important things for any human being, I believe, is seeking to remember who you are and why you came here. And that can only be done by asking yourself. It's not going to be in another course. It's not going to be in a video, not going to be in a book. It's not going to be in a belief structure. All the answers are within you. So learning how to breathe properly, to sit in the silence of your own self and ask yourself the questions: who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Am I learning everything and doing everything that I possibly can in this lifetime? And if not, get on it. As we know, I was just 20 and I just turned 49. I was just 20 a blink ago. And it goes by, and it goes by fast. So enjoy your ride. We came here. This is about playing. Life is about living. So even in the hard times, realize there's a lesson behind it. And you're so much more than you have ever been taught you are. So enjoy exploring you.
Thank you. Thank you. Nate, this has been great. I really have appreciated you being on the show and the incredible insights that you have. I love it. So, folks, thanks for listening. Nate, thanks for being on the show. And, folks, we hope you'll join us again soon. And this is Dr. Doug saying namaste.